Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to the final night of our annual transition event for elementary and middle school audiences. We're very excited to have you back, and we're equally as excited to see new people in the room. My name is Clem Castellano, and I'm an educational specialist for career and transition services. At this time, I'd like to mention if you require a Spanish interpreter, please click on the link in the chat. I would also like to invite one of our Spanish interpreters to share this information with our guests. And that's okay. We can move forward. Um, Before we get started, I would just like to review some of the reminders. This presentation is being recorded. Please use Google Chrome for optimal performance. Audio and video is turned off for participants. However, you may privately chat with moderators. And webinar recordings and evaluations will be emailed later this week. Okay, moving forward. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, we have another full agenda for tonight. For our first hour, we're going to hear from Lucy Beednell and Diane Monig from the ARC of Northern Virginia to help us learn how to successfully plan the transition from school to the adult world, including how to empower your child or student to maximize independence and rights protection by using a chosen team of supporters. After this presentation, we're going to have our second and final parent panel hosted again by Maggie Contreras and Sharon Denisar. So let's dive right into our first presentation. Ms. Beednell and Ms. Monig, I am turning over the mic and manipulation slides to you.
Okay, thank you, Clem, very much. Thank you for having us here tonight. Okay, that works. I'm Diane Monig, and I am the transition manager at the ARC of Northern Virginia, along with Lucy Beednell, our director of advocacy. And we'd like to talk to you tonight about future planning and resources that the ARC of Northern Virginia provides that can help you as you think towards and plan for the future. I'm going to talk to you first about.
All right, that's fine.
I'm going to talk to you first about the ARC of Northern Virginia and the top 10 things to think about while you're transitioning. And as part of those top 10, Lucy will talk to you about supported decision making, and then we'll leave time at the end for questions. You will be receiving these slides, so I have a lot of information on here with websites and web links. So you'll be receiving that, so you don't have to take notes of everything. So to tell you a little bit about the ARC of Northern Virginia, we are the local chapter of a national organization, and our mission is to help ensure that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities can live a full and inclusive life as part of the community. There are 23 ARCs in Virginia and 730 across the country, and every ARC is a little different in the services they provide. Most of what we do at the ARC of Northern Virginia is provide advocacy and information and education resources to empower individuals and their families. So there are some of the ways that we do that. We have a very robust website with a resource library of one-page fact sheets on a variety of life planning topics, a provider directory if you're looking for such things as respite, therapists, dental care, etc. We have a YouTube channel where every workshop and webinar that we offer is archived. Lucy has done tons of great 3-minute webinars on topics like waivers and Social Security and others, if you don't have a full hour to sit down and listen to a webinar, but want to learn a little bit more. I encourage you to subscribe to our resources e-newsletter or follow us on Facebook to learn more about our offerings as well as other offerings in the community. We also provide lots of resources on planning for transition with our transition points guides, which I'll talk more about later, our transition lunch and learn, which is offered once a month, and our transition series, which is a set of 2 days of workshops offered every fall. We do provide some direct services in the form of case management for people who have a developmental disabilities waiver. And we also serve as guardian of last resort for 50 individuals through a grant we have with the Virginia Department of Aging and Rehab Services. We also offer a pooled special needs trust program, which I will talk more about later. And we advocate at both the local and state level. And those efforts are spearheaded by the amazing Lucy Beadnell, who's here tonight. She supports people with disabilities and their families to learn about current legislative issues and how to get more involved, and provides them the tools to do so. She arranges virtual home visits with legislators and coordinates speakers for town halls and budget hearings. She sends out advocacy alerts to let people know what issues there are and how to get involved. So if you'd like to get involved in those efforts, you can reach out to her. And we promote self-advocacy. We offer 2 self-advocacy groups that meet once a month virtually now. I facilitate People First for young adults for people ages 16 to 26. And we practice self-determination skills, communication skills, etc. We usually have an outside presenter come in to talk about their services. And Lucy facilitates People First, a Life Like Yours Toastmasters group that works with a volunteer from Toastmasters to improve public speaking skills and participate in advocacy efforts. And if you'd like to get involved, our contact information is there. We also offer transportation supports, but unfortunately, most of these, Wings, Metro Comes to the Arc, and DMV Connect, are all on hold at the moment, but someday they will be back when we can meet again in person. But we do offer TravelMate and EmployMate, which are 2 apps that we have developed to be used with your phone or an iPad. And we are working with community partners such as schools and employment service organizations to offer them to students. The apps are like having a virtual travel trainer or a virtual job coach in your pocket. And you can visit our website to learn more. And so, why do we want to give you all of this information? Because once your child exits the school system, all services are based on eligibility and funding availability. And it's important that you have the tools you need to help navigate that system successfully. Okay, so these are our transition points guides. These are a great resource to help you figure all of this out. Transition Points is our overarching program where we looked at the critical decision points across the lifespan and created a guide for each one of those points, beginning with early intervention, special education, and these 3 that I have here on the slide: transitioning to adult services, employment, and meaningful day supports, and then housing is the orange one. And then finally, we have another one for later in life on aging with a disability. All of these guides can be downloaded from our website and are available in Spanish, Arabic, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, and Amharic. So now I'd like to review the top 10 things to consider when you transition. Every one of these top 10 things can be its own 1 to 2 hour workshop, which is why we provide a transition series every year. But the goal tonight is just to let you know that these are the things that are helpful to think about now and learn more about them so that you can kind of tick them off as you move forward. So if you have not done so already, contact the Fairfax County Community Services Board. This is the first point of entry for adult services and how you can apply for a developmental disabilities waiver, which provides long-term support services throughout the lifespan, including employment and day support services, nursing care, residential supports, assistive technology, and environmental modifications. Waivers can be a whole other 2-hour workshop, so for now, it's important to know that you should learn about this and apply. More information can be found in the guides, our resource directory, and in webinars archived on our YouTube channel. So I know this is a mix of families, mostly elementary school and middle school families and some high school. But once your student is in high school, you will have an employment transition representative, or ETR, at your school, who is a great resource of information. So definitely utilize them. And then you also, when your child turns 18, want to apply for SSI, Supplemental Security Income. Once your student turns 18, you can apply for SSI, and this money is to be used for food and shelter. And the 2021 amount is $794 per month. Again, we have lots of information on our website, the guides, and YouTube videos about applying for SSI and managing it once you get it. One of the things that is important to remember is that in order to be eligible for SSI and other public benefits, your child cannot have more than $2,000 in resources. So in order to maintain their eligibility for public benefits, you'll need to consider putting that money into a special needs trust. Which brings us to our next slide on special needs trusts. You can open a special needs trust with an attorney or a bank or at the Arc of Northern Virginia, where we offer a pooled special needs trust, which means that the funds are pooled together for investment purposes, but you have your own account within that. Funds from an SNT can be used to pay for any life-enhancing expenditures, like vacations, computers, entertainment, anything that enhances their quality of life. To learn more about special needs trusts, you can sign up for a Trust Talk Tuesday, which we offer every other week, which is a small group meeting to learn more about trusts and other financial planning tools. And then we often get questions about ABLE accounts. ABLE accounts are another tool in the financial planning toolbox. An ABLE account is a way to maintain your eligibility for public benefits. In Virginia, it's called ABLE Now and is operated as a 529. Expenditures must be used for qualified disability expenses, and you are allowed to put up to $15,000 per year in an account. And this is set up only online. There's no brick and mortar bank to go to set this up. Our website has a great comparison chart of special needs trusts and ABLE accounts, so you can learn about the differences between them and how they can be used in conjunction with each other. And then advocate, as you parents normally do all the time. This transition process is overwhelming. Tackle little bits at a time and reach out for help. The Arc of Northern Virginia is here to help you is here to provide you with information to feel empowered to support your child to live a life they choose. I've listed some helpful websites that offer additional transition resources here. And then DARS, I think they are also one of the organizations that spoke during the Super Transition Week. DARS is the Department of Aging and Rehab Services. While in school, DARS offers pre-employment transition services to students to do job exploration and build soft skills. Once out of school, DARS provides short-term support services for competitive integrated employment in the community. Again, we have lots of resources about DARS and their services on our website and videos or webinars on our YouTube channel. Once in high school, you also want to think about applying for a Metro Disability ID card from WMATA to receive a reduced fare. And also consider applying for Metro Access if needed for door-to-door paratransit services. And then also, once your student exits the school system, they lose access to that social network that they had at school. These are listings of some groups that offer activities for young adults. We recently hosted a webinar on social opportunities that are being offered virtually right now, which is archived on our YouTube channel if you're interested in opportunities at this time. And then it's so important to become informed about all of these resources. So it's great that you are here tonight. The more you learn about the options that exist and the funding that is available, the more you can make informed choices and help your student to make informed choices. So talk to your ETR, contact the ARC, and I encourage you to really review our transition points. Guys, again, I realize it's overwhelming, so review in little bits and kind of tackle little bits at a time. All of the different agencies and organizations that we discussed tonight are in there, along with all of the organizations in our area that provide day support services and employment services. We also include information on post-secondary resources if that's a path that your child is interested in. It's good to start learning about what is out there now to start planning for the future. And then lastly, we want to talk about, and this is where Lucy is going to spend more time, on exploring decision-making options and supports. We get this question frequently. My child is turning 18, and I heard I need to get guardianship. Is that true? The answer is no. It's one option of providing decision-making support, and this is the most restrictive option. So it's important to look at the full range of options that are available. We have a lot of information and resources on our website about guardianship, and we also have lists of attorneys that provide that offer guardianship services. And I will mention that the fees for guardianship, again, because this is a question we get asked a lot, generally range from $1,200 to $4,000, and the process usually takes 2 to 3 months and must be done with an attorney using an elder law attorney. And with that, to kind of explain different levels of supported decision-making that includes guardianship and powers of attorney, and of course, what she's here to talk about tonight is supported decision-making, I'll turn it over to Lucy.
Thank you so much, Diane. So we'll go ahead and get rolling here. So first, a little bit about me. I've been at the ARC of Northern Virginia since 2008. Supported decision-making is a big passion of mine. I spent some time working as a public legal guardian for individuals with developmental disabilities and some other kinds of disabilities. And I have just concluded about a 1.5-year long grant project that was funded by the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities in partnership with the Burton Blatt Institute, where we worked really heavily on supported decision-making. So part of that was developing some resources and tools that we'll talk about tonight. And another large part of that grant was working really closely with 10 students, not all students actually, 10 people between the ages of 19 and 40, most of whom were in their 20s, to figure out how to create a supported decision-making plan for them. So I'll talk a little bit about some of them tonight.
I beg your pardon, Ms. Speednell, this is Clem speaking. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have two people who required interpreters who entered the room, and I was just hoping one of our Spanish interpreters could invite them into the other room so they can understand. So
sí,
please go ahead.
Por favor, vemos a dos personas que requieren traducción en español. Si ustedes serían tan gentiles de, por favor, entrar al cuarto en español, el link está enviado en el chat. Si pueden apretar ahí, por favor, para entrar al cuarto, que van a tener esta presentación en español. Gracias.
Thanks, Clem. Muchas gracias for the interpreters for tonight. So what I want to walk through a little bit is, what does supported decision-making mean? And how could you use it with other types of supports? Why is it worth doing? And then we'll walk through some of the kind of sticky what-if questions I tend to get when we raise the idea of supported decision-making. Then we'll give some examples of really putting supported decision-making into action and some folks who've done that. And then I'll end with a whole bunch of resources related to supported decision-making. So at its most basic, supported decision-making is a part of our culture. It's a part of every culture in the world. It's simply the idea that when you have a choice and you're trying to understand both what the choice means and the best option for you to choose, you talk with people you know and love and trust to get their advice or support in making that decision. This is the same way that most typically developing adults call family or friends when they're thinking about buying a new house or car or changing jobs. You call the people in your life who you think are experts in that area and you talk through it. And that's all supported decision-making is. It can be informal like most of us do, or it can be more formal if someone needs more frequent levels of support. Supported decision-making works for absolutely everyone in the world. Like we mentioned, most adults who don't have unusual support needs use supported decision-making naturally. We bring our spouses into the room to talk to the doctor when we're consulting about a surgery, for example, or we call our aunt who's a doctor when we're trying to figure out about medical choices. That's something we all do, and we're all leveraging supported decision-making. If we're working with a student who has more significant needs than a typically developing adult, then supported decision-making is appropriate, and we would layer in more supports. So for example, I would advise that student and their family talk about all the different areas of life. And there are great worksheets linked at the end of this to help walk people through it. But let's say, for example, financial decisions and healthcare decisions and relationship decisions and decisions on transportation and education, and write out all those areas of life. And then next to it say, is this an area of life where I need some help understanding my choices and making my choices? Yes or no? And if you do need some help, then who do you want to help you? Who do you trust in those areas? And it can be one person or two people or a whole bunch of folks. And then how do I want that support? So in a lot of cases, if someone says, what I really want is mom or dad or aunt or uncle or grandparent or family friend or whoever it is that's important in your life to come with me to the doctor or the bank or to my IEP meetings, to come with me to help navigate these things, to help explain to me my choices so that I can make the very best decision for me, then I usually recommend a tool called a power of attorney. Powers of attorney are incredibly common in the United States. My husband and I have powers of attorney. They are very common. It's simply a way of saying this person has the authority to work with me on these decisions. If I'm temporarily incapacitated, they can make the decision for me, but we're a decision-making team. And it means that that person then has rights to information about, if it was a medical power of attorney, about that person's medical care, when their appointments are coming up, suggested surgeries, diagnoses, medications, treatment plans, those kinds of things. It enables you to work together. And for financial resources, you can do a financial power of attorney, but as Diane mentioned, for a lot of folks, having a representative payee for Social Security benefits and a special needs trust for other assets is usually all you need. There are lots of advantages to powers of attorney, and we'll talk through those in a little bit. But in that section, that's kind of the essence of what I usually mean when I talk about supported decision-making, that a group of people that the person with the disability chose are working hand in hand with them to help them understand and make decisions. Then, for individuals who need limited or full guardianship, supported decision-making can and should still be used. People often ask, how do you know if someone needs a guardian? And there's no super easy way to answer that, but the best answer I can give you is to say that the law says you know someone needs a guardian when you have truly exhausted every least restrictive alternative, including supported decision-making. Someone needs a guardian if, no matter how long we take, no matter how we share the information with the person, they cannot really understand their choices and they cannot give us an answer back. And in that case, there's going to have to be a guardian appointed, generally speaking, and then that guardian's job will still be to do supported decision-making, to know the culture, the preferences, the wishes of that person with a disability, and to the greatest possible degree, those are supposed to be used to drive the guardian's decisions. So when I say supported decision-making can be used for everybody, I mean it can and should be used for everybody on the planet. For a lot of people with disabilities, using supported decision-making in combination with legal tools like a special needs trust or power of attorney is enough. For some folks, they may need something more. So why should we consider this idea of supported decision-making? And now we have about 40 years worth of studies showing that when people exercise self-determination, control over their own life, their quality of life, their happiness increases, but so does their level of safety. That's really critical. And that makes sense when we think about it. And bear in mind, these are studies comparing people with very similar disabilities and abilities, and saying if someone with a significant disability has a guardian, and we compare that person to someone else with a significant disability who doesn't have a guardian, who has a better quality of life and who is safer. And what the study data shows is that the people without guardians tend to have better lives and be safer. And that makes sense. When you have a guardian, you have removed all of the civil rights and legal adult rights from the person with a disability. Professionals in their life tend to talk around and talk past them. Parents or whoever else are appointed to the guardian tend to be the person who is respected and listened to. Like anyone else in the world, people with a disability know when they are not being heard and when their wishes are not driving their own life. It doesn't make us happy, and it doesn't empower us to stand up for ourselves, and that's ultimately what makes people safer. People who use supported decision-making tend to be more independent, and I don't mean that they need no help with anything. I don't think there's anybody on the planet that needs no help with anything. I just mean they're maximizing their independence. Dignity of risk is something that we've also learned is really important, and that means there's a lot of dignity and self-respect that comes from being allowed to make some bad choices. Here I often talk about how when someone with a disability is approaching age 18, we think about all of the awful decisions they could make, even if they have no history of making those decisions. But when typically developing kids turn 18, we laugh about all the awful decisions we know they're going to go off and make in college. Well, that's because we know that that's how you learn. Maybe in college you got a credit card and you racked up some debt that was hard to pay off. That'll teach you about financial management. Maybe you made some questionable decisions about relationships or social habits. That will teach you about the kind of people you want to be with in the future and how you want to behave. That risk that we allow all people without disabilities is something we want to make sure we also extend to people with disabilities. It is what makes us human. The right to make our own choices and feel like our life is within our control. Supported decision-making preserves the rights of the person with a disability, and there is little to no cost at all to put it in place. I say little to no cost because simply to do supported decision-making costs nothing. If you choose to hire someone to draft your powers of attorney, that usually costs a few $100s. If you choose to create your own powers of attorney or buy templates online, that usually costs very little money. More reasons to consider supported decision-making. You're probably already doing it. If right now when your loved one with a disability has a choice in front of them and you talk to them about it and help them figure out their choices, you're already doing this. This can be implemented immediately and is naturally part of what we do. It also releases reliance on a single person to be the sole supporter of the person with a disability. Often I get calls from parents who are aging and they say, we are guardians. Who's going to be the guardian when we're not here anymore? And the answer to that is whoever you have trained and lined up to be the next guardian. If you don't have someone to do that, supported decision-making is all the more valuable. Instead of saying there is one person who has to spend this money to go back to court to serve as guardian, to make all of the decisions, to file all the annual guardianship reports, you are spreading that out over a team. Maybe you say that someone that student had a really close relationship with at school is going to help them navigate post-secondary education. Maybe an aunt who is a medical professional or a finance professional is going to give advice on those areas. Instead of asking one person to do everything, you are building a team around the person that can support each other. Virginia law, the National Guardianship Association, and all best practices emphasize that least restrictive options must be fully explored before you take on guardianship. Removing guardianship is difficult and expensive. It is far easier to put it in place later than it is to remove it. Virginia has considered and has passed additional legislation on supported decision-making, and all that legislation and all the work groups come down in favor of. We need to be doing this more. I won't read this, but it's the National Guardianship Association's statement on supported decision-making that says again and again and again, this is what everyone should be doing and trying always before you consider guardianship, and try it in the deepest, most earnest way you can. So the question that tends to pop up now is, what if something bad happens? And I'll give you the most honest answer to that I can. Everyone is vulnerable. People with disabilities are often more vulnerable. So when I say studies show that supported decision-making without guardianship tends to make people safer, I am asking you to trust in science and data and research and the very many people with disabilities who we have talked to and learned from before, who have shown that when we listen to them and respect their choices and maximize their control of their own life, that's the way that you keep them safe. Supported decision-making utilizes and builds on the strengths of the person with a disability. There may be some areas in their life when they need a lot of supports. So build a lot of supports in those areas. But there may be some areas of their life when they need much lower level of supports. We don't want to use the broad pen of guardianship and take away all of their rights across the board, including the areas where they have some independence, for the sake of simplicity, of ease, of, well, I heard we should just do this. We've talked about this already, but we all learn and how to make better decisions by having made some bad decisions. No one learns best by being told, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. We live in a nation of people who are by and large overweight and in debt, and who don't save enough for retirement, and who stay out too late and don't get enough sleep and too much. And these are things that we joke and laugh about because of part of what it means to be human. I worry a lot when we deny any of those options to people with disabilities just because they have a disability. That means I worry when we say, oh yeah, other people have the right to smoke or drink or overspend or make bad choices, but I want to prevent my loved one with a disability from ever making a bad choice, so I'll take away all their choices. It's a really dangerous place to be in, and it removes a lot of humanity, which isn't something any of us should take lightly. So one of the next questions we tend to get is, how do I get started? This is a relatively abstract concept. So I'd say that there's a few ways to do it, and we worked with a lot of people very closely in our pilot project to put up supported decision-making, and every single person ultimately decided to do it their own way. But there are some resources linked at the end here, and I'll talk through a few of them. There's an article by a mom named Suzanne Francisco, and the article is called Setting the Wheels in Motion. In that article, she talks about what it's like to be a mom of 3 children approaching adulthood, all of whom have different degrees of developmental disabilities. And she talks about why she realized for all of her kids who have very different levels of need that supported decision-making was the path for them. And then she lays out some worksheets that she used to get her ideas on paper on how to get the help she needed. Some people wrote ideas on napkins or paper or spreadsheets or iPhone notes or anything just to start getting a list in their head of, these are the people I like and trust in my life. These are the people I already go to and want to keep going to when I have decisions. There's a great worksheet from the ACLU called When Do I Want Support that mirrors the idea that I shared before. Who do you need to help you? When do you want them to help you? And how much? Those kinds of things are a really easy way to start getting ideas on paper. And when you're looking at building a supported decision-making team, you want more than just one person on it and some balance. There are going to be some paid and unpaid people on that list. So for example, if your doctor is someone who's really good at explaining things to the person with a disability, using a chart of the human body, letting questions be written down in advance, really takes the time to get to know them, then that's a paid supporter in the person's life, and they're someone who helps them understand medical decisions. The same as if you have someone who has a special needs trust, or you have a financial advisor, or other folks in the person's life who are paid in some form or fashion and are there as professionals. And a lot of the folks on the list will be unpaid, and you'll want to balance. Okay. So when we talk about how to really get going with supported decision making, I say first get some of those ideas on paper. In whatever way it makes sense to you, start thinking about who this team is, and then start talking with them. If you are a texter, set up a shared text group. If you are a social media folks, set up a closed or private Facebook group, or an email listserv that's private, or a WhatsApp group that's private. Start sharing good and bad news and questions regularly. You are getting these folks in the habit of communicating and learning as a team about the little things that are important in the life of the person with a disability. Hey, I did a great job on my test today. Hey, I hung out with my friends. Hey, I hit a home run at Special Olympics baseball. Whatever those good or bad day-to-day things are, those are the kinds of things you start sharing with your supported decision-making team, because the job of that team is to know and care about the person with a disability and use what they know to help inform that person's decisions. Some folks with a disability that we worked with were very private, and they were happy to share those general kind of bits of life news with the whole team, but they really wanted to keep medical decisions or financial decisions with just the people they trusted to advise them on those areas, and that's fine. Set up a regular FaceTime or Zoom chat with those folks, or have a plan so that whenever you have a financial or a legal or a contract decision, the habit is, I always call so-and-so before I sign something. Or whenever anybody asks me a question and they write it down on paper, I take a picture on my phone and I send it to my mom or my dad or my sister, and I never sign anything or give anybody money until I get an answer back. Whatever way it is that that person best learns and communicate, that's what you'll start to do. And then over time, you evaluate. Everyone learns and grows and changes, and that's a great thing. So there are a lot of folks who, like I said, we worked with in our pilot program, 10 people of very different abilities, genders, half of whom had guardians going into the pilot program, half of whom did not. Every single person came up with a different type of plan and a different set of goals for the future. Of the 5 people who came into our project with a guardian, one of them said, really, this is confirmed that we need to have a guardian in place, but has changed the way we operate our guardianship. Instead of doing what we know or think is right because we're mom and dad, we are involving our adult son in those decisions, and we are making sure that we're making the choices that are the decisions we know he would make, not just the decisions we want him to make. 3 of the 5 people who came in with a guardian said, we made a mistake putting guardianship in place. It's what we thought we should do and what we were told we would do, and we were scared, and now we want to start walking that back. And the 5th of the 5 people said, we realize that guardianship is not what we need for the long term, and in the next handful of years, we want to pull it away. And it was incredibly powerful to me that this group of 10 people with very different needs and abilities and backgrounds essentially all reached the conclusion that supported decision-making was the right tool for them. I'm happy to take questions, but I also wanted to put up, this is a link to, or this list of resources here is also on our supported decision-making library. If you go to the arcofnova.org, which is the Arc of Northern Virginia's website, then type /SDM, so the arcofnova.org/SDM, the acronym for supported decision-making, this will all come up, along with videos and handouts and presentations and all kinds of things. But online, we have a ton on our resource library. There are all kinds of national organizations that talk about supported decision-making that have example news and stories and laws. The Disability Law Center of Virginia has a free power of attorney builder, and they can help with advanced directives and rights and choices. There's a great book on supported decision-making written by Jonathan Martinez, who was our grant partner, with ideas for wording for powers of attorney and future planning and dream-inspired planning and all kinds of really great things. I think it's 10 or 20 bucks on Amazon, and it's a great way to really get a good sense of how this works. Jonathan is a lawyer, so there's some legal speak in there, but it's meant to be very approachable. So he gets it from the legal perspective, but also speaks in a way that's understandable. The article that I mentioned from the mom, Suzanne Francisco, is there. The Jenny Hatch Justice Project is there, which is an organization set off by a woman in Virginia Beach who was one of the first people in the country to remove her guardianship in favor of supported decision-making. The ACLU tool called When Do I Want Support is there, and then a supported decision-making toolkit and sample agreement are there from our national chapter. And I know that we're happy now to take questions from anybody who has them. And Clem, just to be clear, should we be looking for to raise hands or put questions in the chat?
That is a terrific question. Thank you. Yeah, if you would like to speak, excuse me, if you're a guest and you'd like to speak and ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand. And Lucy or Diane can go ahead and, recognize you, and we can make you a presenter so you can speak. If you're more comfortable using the chat and don't want to use your voice, that's okay too. You can just type it in there, and then at this point now, either one of you could respond vocally to a question in the chat, if that helps. So please feel free to raise your hand if you have a question and would like to speak.
Diane, you can jump in here too, but it looks like there were a fair number of questions in the chat about Social Security. There's no getting around the fact that it's kind of a slow bureaucratic process and it's a lot of paperwork. But generally speaking, folks with developmental disabilities are approved once they're 18 without weird hiccups or appeals or any kind of glitches. So the advice I give people usually is to look at our free transition guides and start applying. Start the application online. They're going to ask you questions that you know the answer to. And if you get stuck on a question, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. And we are totally free in answering those questions, and usually very fast. But yeah, we're happy to do those kinds of things, but don't feel like you need to talk to someone before you can explore Social Security, or that it's a really awful or complicated process. It's mostly just tedious.
And I will just add to that, we have lots of resources on our website, like tips of information you should have in hand when you're getting ready to fill out the application. We have a sample room and board agreement, which is something you want to consider when you're applying for SSI, because the money is to be used for food and shelter. So you would want your child to be paying you for room and board, because that's what the money is going to go to. So we have a sample lease agreement that you could bring with you when you meet the representative at Social Security. Lucy, there's some questions on here about guardianship. Can both parents be designated as guardians at the same time?
Yeah, and I generally recommend that you don't put just one person in the role as guardian, because that means, let's use an example. If Jim's guardian is mom and mom gets sick or passes away suddenly or is out of the country, then there is no one else who can make decisions for Jim in that time period. Whereas if you have what's called a co-guardian, meaning what's usually mom and dad, but can be parent and sibling or aunt and cousin or whoever you want, as co-guardians, either of those people can act as guardian. And if one of those people passes away or incapacitated, the other co-guardian doesn't have to go back to court. They just continue on working. I saw the question there about, can we help you decide what's the appropriate level of legal authority or guardianship required? That's a conversation I have with people all the time. And if someone sends us a message, and I know our contact information is on here, I'm happy to set up, what I usually do is a Zoom chat. We don't have office phones or meetings, in-person meetings right now, but to sit down and talk through things. At the end of the day, you're the parents, and you're going to know your child better than anybody else. So you're going to know the person, but I can walk you through options, and I can give you examples of what other people have done and how things have worked, and I can answer your questions and your scary what ifs and anything you want. Absolutely, we can do that.
And there's a question about when to start the SSI process. Once your child turns 18, like Lucy said, it's good to start looking at what kind of information you need to have, but you actually begin applying the month after your child turns 18.
A question about the Disability Law Center. They are not going to sit down and meet with you to write a custom power of attorney. The link that I shared, and I can go back to it, for the Disability Law Center has what they call a power of attorney builder. So you can go to their website, to that power of attorney builder, and start putting in the pieces that you want for your power of attorney. And then you would download it, and then you can adjust it. You can put your name and your child's name in there. You can do other things like that, but it's kind of a toolkit to get you started with it. Does supported decision-making require the same process as guardianship? No, there is no legal process to put supported decision-making in place. You can put a power of attorney in place. To put a power of attorney place in Virginia, that means you download it and customize it and sign it, and then it's there. That's all there is to do to start using a power of attorney. But supported decision-making really is about matching the needs of the person with a disability to supporters in their life. And so that's more a conversation and an idea and a habit and a practice of doing it. So there's no legal process, which is why there's really no cost to do it. If you choose to do that using tools like a power of attorney, like I mentioned, there are ways to get a power of attorney for free or very low cost, or you could hire an attorney to write one. Or you can use a tool like a special needs trust or representative payee for Social Security, but that's all going to depend upon the person with a disability. You've got to start supported decision making by figuring out what does this person need and how do I customize those needs with the right support for that need. So no legal process, no removal of rights, no big expensive court trip, none of that.
Lucy, I don't know if you saw a question. Do you have any resources on using supported decision making for individual, teen, young adults' decision about the use of social media and technology?
It's an interesting question. We had an attorney present with us as part of the grant, and they touched on a lot of areas of life. One of them kind of being transition age, which touches on this loosely. I don't know that I've ever seen a supported decision-making resource that was exclusively about social media and technology, but a lot of what we did with supported decision-making was what was called dream-inspired planning. I don't know if I can turn my camera on here for a second. Oh, I guess not. Oh, I don't know if you can see me. So if you imagine your arm as a line and at the tip of your fingertips, we would say to the person with the disability, what is your dream? What do you want? Do you want to own your own business? Do you want to live in your own apartment? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to live in your parents' house for the rest of your life? Whatever it is that gets you up in the morning, that makes you feel excited, imagine that on your fingertips. And every time we talked about that person making a decision, we said, okay, let's see. Does that decision get us closer to that dream? So when talking about social media and understanding those kinds of things, that's the tool I would use. What's your dream? If it's to be employed, then you should know employers look at social media. They look and see what pictures you put up. So are you putting up pictures for someone you would want to hire? Let's think about who we like to hire. What are those good qualities? Are those pictures showing those things? You know, whatever it is that's going on in that person's life, you're trying to match that question or that support need up with where that puts them in their dream and what they want, because really that's what motivates us all. Are we getting closer to what's important to me? And that kind of motivation keeps us going a lot longer than most other things.
I'll just add, we get a lot of questions about social media resources, about how to teach your child about using it appropriately. We had a workshop several months ago that's on our YouTube channel. It was a professor from the University of Tennessee who came and talked about, she has a whole class for students with disabilities about using social media appropriately. And she provided lots of tools and curriculum that she uses with her students that would be applicable for parents to also use with their children. So it might be something you want to take a look at. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat box. Does anybody else have any questions?
If there aren't other questions, I just really wanted to encourage folks to reach out to us anytime. Our office phone numbers are here, though we don't have access to them now. So by far the best way to reach us is through email, but I'm happy to set up Zoom chats with people to talk about, what does this mean, or how do I solve this complicated problem or whatnot. If it's something that can't easily be done through email, just start with an email so we can schedule it. Can we expand a little bit more on when and what type of DD waivers are? Sure. So a waiver is essentially funding for long-term support services. So a waiver funds things like a personal care aid to help someone be more independent at home or in the community, supports on the job, supports in their own house or a house with roommates or a group living situation, whatever it is. A waiver pays for all of that staff support. There are developmental disability waivers, commonly called the DD waivers, and they are managed by the Fairfax Community Services Board. I think Diane had their contact information up earlier on the waivers slide, and you would apply for a waiver to ask for those kinds of support services. The waivers have a waiting list that's based upon urgency of need, so it's really hard to predict. So all the more reason to get on that waiting list sooner rather than later, so that ultimately that person does have funding for staff to help them with whatever they have coming next in their life. On the YouTube channel and our website and our transition points guides, everywhere you can imagine, we have a ton of information about waivers. Like Diane said, they're like a 2-hour conversation in and of themselves, but I have a waiver basics presentation coming up next week, which is Wednesday, March 3rd at 10 a.m. And at the arcofnova.org, you can sign up for it on our events tab. And if you can't come live, that's fine. If you just sign up, then I'll send you the recording and the slides. But there's tons of those things, like I said, already on our YouTube channel and our transition guide and our online library. More waiver information than you can shake a stick at. And we try really hard to put anything other than the transition guides, which are meant to be a really big picture look, in a 1- or 2-page format, so it's easy to get through. There is no age minimum or maximum for Medicaid waivers, either to apply for them or to use them. Apply as soon as you hear about them and use it once you get it for the rest of the person's life. Oh, thanks, Diane, for putting our website up there. Yeah, so at the arcofnova.org, you can click Resource Library at the top of the page, and there's a whole section on waivers. The waiting, I would not count on it being a 2-year waiting list. For most people, it's significantly longer, but like I said, it's based upon urgency of need and funding options, so it's incredibly hard to predict. On average, people wait significantly longer than 2 years. Okay, Clem, would you like us to wrap up here?
Yes, but or no, but actually, I think that you said that the wait was significantly longer, and I wanted to piggyback on that. For family, or not to piggyback, but to sort of ask you a question with a little explanation first, I guess. If when families are applying, if you could speak to this, I suppose, when families are applying for a waiver, my understanding is a lot of times families will put in what is an obstacle for them rather than what is an obstacle for the person applying. And again, my understanding is that the people who sit on the waiver slot assignment committees are charged with looking at the person who is applying. So I was just wondering if you could speak to that and what you would recommend people advocate to their support coordinators when they're completing those.
Yeah, so the waivers are based upon urgency of need for the person with the disability's situation. So let me explain a little bit about what that means. Let's imagine that we have an 18-year-old who has autism and has a moderate level of support need. If you tell me that 18-year-old has 2 working parents who are high income earners, he has insurance, so he's getting 40 hours of ABA a week. He has DARS in place. He already has a part-time job. He has every kind of support service he could possibly need, and he's safe and he's doing well. He's going to be pretty low on the waiting list. On the other hand, if you tell me that exact same 18-year-old with autism and relatively moderate abilities and support needs has two parents that are not in the picture, or one parent who has to be a stay-at-home parent because this child has violent behaviors that make it hard for him to get out of the home, and they don't have much in the way of insurance coverage or other supports, that person's going to be very high on the waiting list. So what the waiting list committee is looking at is a combination of what needs does this person with a disability have, and how well are those needs being met now? So sometimes people with very low needs are high up on the waiting list, because even if you have low needs and you don't have anybody in your life who is helping you take care of things, you are in the most urgent situation. Sometimes people with very high needs are high up on the waiting list, even if they do have supports in their life, because the supports they have are not enough. So it's very hard to gauge. You want to give a really clear picture of not only the needs of the person with a disability, but how those needs are being met. And if they're not being met now, how a waiver would help. And that's the real key. So if we're talking about someone who has dangerous behaviors, or someone who's going to graduate and doesn't have a place to go, or someone who's on the cusp of homelessness, whatever it is you're explaining, and we need the waiver to offer job supports, give them support so they can live independently, bring in Medicaid so we can get ABA therapy, whatever it is that you think this person needs, you're tying how the waiver helps them with that person's support need. Does that make sense, Clem?
I'm sorry, I was trying to turn my mic on. Yes, no, it does, and I've also heard, and again, if you could speak to this too, that when families are applying for services, you know, I think it's a natural, speaking as a parent, it's your natural tendency. It's instinctive with parents. You want to talk about, you want to brag about your kids and how much you love them and how great they are. But when you're applying for services, you have to be counterintuitive, I suppose, when you are sharing about your child with a disability, and you should actually be speaking to their greatest need. If you could just sort of comment or share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's right. So the expression we use a lot is stressing the need. Saying that things are great and that your child is great may be true, but none of those things are going to get them services. So focus on the areas where things aren't great and where they need help. That's what folks really need to know in order to determine who most urgently needs help. Because as long as we are underfunding our waiver services, only people who really are showing, I need help and I don't have it, are going to get any kind of waiver support.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for that. If anyone has any other questions, I want to give them an opportunity. Oh, it looks like, oh, okay. It looks like Ms. Pack has asked a question here. So it says, so in order to be on the DD waiver service, should parents reach out to the DD waiver office or the ETR?
They're going to apply to the Fairfax County Community Services Board. And that's the Fairfax County Community Services Board is the group that will help the person apply for the waiver, and that you will talk to while they're on the waiting list to make sure they know why that person needs supports. This is the number that I just put in the chat for the Community Services Board, but it's in our transition guides and our waiver handouts and our slides here tonight, and your ETR can help you find it. DD waiver provides services to people 6 years and older. Has that changed? Yes. In 2016, the DD waivers changed and removed that age minimum. There is no age minimum. Babies are eligible for the DD waiver as soon as they are born if they have a developmental disability.
That is terrific. Thank you so much, Ms. Beednell and Ms. Monig. Your time is actually perfect. Your timing, rather, is perfect. It is 7:29, and 7:30 starts our next session. So, as usual, you guys knocked it out of the park. The ARC has always been such a huge supportive partner with Fairfax County Public Schools, and I'm sure that everybody who is listening to the information we just heard, I'm sure you can understand why. I cannot thank you both enough.
Thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you all. Be in touch anytime.
Definitely our pleasure. I hope everyone can hear me. If you're having trouble understanding me, please let me know. I'm seeing in the chat that there's someone who's having trouble hearing me, and obviously I can't tell if I'm having mic issues or not. Okay, so for our second and final session, I'd like to mention that if you require a Spanish interpreter, please click on the link in the chat. And I would also like to invite one of our Spanish interpreters to share this information with our guests.
Entonces, señores, estamos entrando a la segunda parte y la parte final de nuestra presentación. Si ustedes quisieran la presentación en español, por favor, tienen que entrar al cuarto en español y tenemos ahí el enlace que está mostrando para entrar a él. Gracias.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. In addition to our guests, you'll also notice that there is a link in the chat. This link will take you to a short form that permits us to collect feedback excuse me, on the session you just heard. Please click on the link and complete the survey. We'd really like to hear from you so we can continue to make our events better and better every year. Okay, so thank you again. I am now going to turn the mic over to our job coach supervisors, Maggie Contreras and Sharon Denisar. They're going to introduce our parent and student panel. So ladies, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Castellano. I believe Ms. Denisar is having some connection issues, so I will just be taking over for her for a little bit. This segment of tonight's presentation is going to consist of a parent panel of former FCPS parents, and they will be taking the time to talk with you all tonight about their experience with transition services and sharing any relevant information that hopefully will be helpful to you in regards to the transition process. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask each of our panel guests to take some time, introduce yourselves, speak a little bit about your experience for about 6 minutes, and then we will move into a Q&A from the rest of the participants. So do we have Lena Ferris? Lena, are you here?
Hi, yeah, this is Lena. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. So again, hi, I'm Lena Ferris. So this is actually my son Luke's story that I'm going to share with you in a condensed version. Everyone's child has different skills and needs, so this is just really what went on with Luke. So my son Luke, he's currently 24 years old. He went to McLean High School, and then from McLean, he went to the Davis Center. After he graduated from the Davis Center, Luke was really fortunate enough to be selected for the MOST program. And the MOST program is it's a job training program, much like the Davis Center, but it's run by the Jewish Foundation for Group Homes. And basically it provided him with one additional extra year of job training with training coaches. So that was a great program he got into, and we were really thrilled about that. Then when that program ended, we selected Best Buddies to be a job coach service for Luke, and they were able to help get him set up with the job at Marshall's. And at the same time, in the last year or so, we are also really fortunate that the City of Falls Church opened a group home. And the thing was, Luke wasn't eligible to live in the group home. He doesn't have the right kind of Medicaid DD waiver. He has the DD waiver, but you have to have the right kind to live in the group home. But he did qualify to live in the basement apartment of the group home, which is an independent living apartment that was set aside with somebody with an intellectual disability. And so his waiver did allow him to live in the independent living apartment. So he has a job right now and he has an apartment. So I wanted to talk about some of the obstacles and things we wish we knew in advance, and some recommendations, and kind of how we got to where we are. And really, it sounds really rosy, but it was a really very stressful journey. So, you know, the government guarantees an education, but not a job. So there's a lot of assistance out there, but just be aware that it always isn't commensurate with an actual job happening. Other thoughts I had: try and broaden your concept of what a job is. So Luke works right now at Marshall's just one shift a week, and I'm going to get into that a little bit. On 9 to 12 on Tuesdays, and on Fridays he volunteers at a church where he sorts food. And you need to think about, sometimes the volunteering jobs work out a lot better. Some things we learned about Luke's job at Marshall's. Well, first of all, when he first got it, they wouldn't give him a set schedule. And that's a different thing, a really difficult thing for our kids who need some kind of certainty in their day-to-day routine. They also scheduled him for 3 full-day shifts, and it was just too much for him. He was stressed out, he was unhappy. Also, what came into the picture now, he needed transportation to his job, and so with his DD waiver, we were able to use Logisticare, which is the taxi service that Medicaid provides. But, you know, sometimes Logisticare didn't come, they came late, they never came, they dropped him off at the wrong place. It was really very stressful working through that. Other things we learned. So, as I said, Luke works now 9 to 12, 1 day a week. And I want to talk a little bit about that. You know, he's a regular employee at Marshall's. So, you know, he was hired like all the new employees at minimum wage. So he loses 50 cents to every dollar he makes back to Social Security. He also pays into Medicaid and Social Security, even though he'll likely never work enough hours to qualify for Social Security corridors. So it starts as a minimum wage job. He ends up working for about $2 an hour. So don't go into looking for a job for your kid for the money. He's extremely happy with his once-a-week shift. After 3 managers later from Marshall's, we were able to get this set schedule of once a week after many trial and errors. And with the set schedule, we were also able to get Logisticare to actually get on a set schedule with him, which was also, working with Logisticare was also very, it's time intensive, and it takes a lot of patience and negotiation. Other thoughts I have: if you don't have the DD waiver, you need to get on the waiting list. We got Luke on the waiting list when he was 3, and when he was 15, he was first eligible for services. I mean, that's how long it took. But what does the waiver get him? Well, it got him access to Logisticare. It gets him access to aides that help him. And, you know, we manage Luke's, the hiring of his aides. The waivers work in different ways. You can go through a service, but we manage it. So we hire people to help him get through his day, get him to and from his activities, shopping, cooking, cleaning, pretty much whatever he needs. How else, you know, does Luke spend his time? Well, he participates in Special Olympics. He participates in fitness classes for special needs through Fairfax County Parks and Rec. And he also has a private fitness instructor once a week. Some recommendations on what we wish we knew. Well, it took me a while to understand that my son is much happier when his day isn't overscheduled. When he first left the MOST program, because the MOST program was on the same schedule as like the Davis Center or the schools, it was an all-day program. I was really worried about jam-packing his schedule so that he was busy again from like 8 to 4. But what I really learned was that Luke's #1 priority was that he wants to sleep until 10 o'clock every day. He's a great, easygoing kid if he can just have that. And so we really tried to arrange his schedule to allow him that thing that he wanted. On Tuesdays when he goes to Marshall's, his schedule is unfortunately from 9 to 12. So, but he's okay with it because he knows that 1 day a week he has to get up, he has to go to his job, but that the other days of the week he is going to get to do the one thing that really like makes him happy.
Mrs.
So
Farrell,
yes.
thank you so much. I have to stop you here for a few minutes, and then I'm sure we'll have lots of questions for you at the end. If you could just sit
Okay.
tight. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
And I think we're going to head over to Beth Lord and her daughter Libby. Are you with us this evening?
Yes, I am. I'm Beth, and my husband John is actually here with me tonight. Libby was like Ms. Harris. Libby was a graduate of McLean High School and is 24. She was a couple of years ahead of Luke. Well, I'm sorry, she's 26 now, and we had, like the Ferrises, were at McLean and then went to the Davis Center and had several years at the Davis Center, and then unfortunately John's job pulled us out of state. But I guess the skills and the memories that we have of different job sites and different just different things through this whole process were, for the most part, positive. We've had some difficult times, but for the most part, positive. In sort of, she had temporary jobs through her stay at the Davis Center, and then we moved out of state and participated in a program there that gave her another year similar to the Davis Center. And then she was hired from one of those internships to work at a day spa. And that just turned out to be a really wonderful experience. That's given her some skills that have proved well when we moved back to the area, and allowed her to find another job that was going well until the pandemic hit, unfortunately. For us, our big obstacle, besides we have been on the waiting for a DD waivers for as long as we can remember, but is the transportation issues. And we want her to be independent, but we also have we have some concerns of just in her safety, and this is, since the time she was even in the WAT program at McLean and going out to job sites, and then to date going, to a real job. The transportation issues are something that we stuck out to us as sort of a challenge. We've taught her skills through this process of
riding the metro and metro access and stuff.
Yes, and buses, Uber, all of these different platforms have been, great, but not always the best for our kids. And so as far as kind of counsel to parents that are starting to prepare, that is to us sort of a vital piece of it, to work with the schools, with the job coaches, to put into place those proper transportation. And then the other obstacle that we've kind of encountered through the years has just been working as a team with employers, job coaches, and finding, we've often gone into the jobs and worked with them to find out where shortcomings might be and how we could support her and prepare her to do a better job in those in each job that she's had. And sometimes that involves us being involved in, as I said, going into the job site and talking with the job coaches or store managers and the employer, and then sometimes doing our homework at home, learning to fold towels in just the right way, or something of that nature. So overall, I think our experience, it's certainly never been easy, but it's been good, and it's been a good experience.
Beth, thank you so much for sharing. And if you would please be kind enough to sit tight, we'll have plenty of questions for you, I'm sure, in a while. Thank you so much to both of you.
Absolutely.
And next on our panel, we have Sylvia Sagari and her daughter Yasmin.
Hello.
Hi,
Yes.
Sylvia. Thanks for joining us.
Of course, yeah, Yasmin is here with me, and I want to give some greetings also to Lena and to Beth, since we were pals in many situations. Like the cases of Luke and Libby, Yasmin went to Fairfax County, went to McLean High School, and then to the Davis Center. She has an extremely complex medical history. Yasmin is 24. She's had 27 surgeries, including 6 open heart surgeries and other brain surgeries and other kind of relatively more minor surgeries, though what is minor of any surgery? Anyway, so she had a EDCD waiver that became the CCC plus waiver for a long, long time. And then we went to we received the self-directed services from Fairfax. And about just a year ago, she got her slot in an FIS waiver after several years in the waiting list. By the way, the people at the Arc of Virginia, Lucy, Diane, that were there before, have been instrumental in accompanying us in this journey. So I would encourage all parents to really, really work with them. Now, in terms of transition and jobs, Yasmin started, it was very clear she's very, very petite. And because of her health issues, there were a lot of the typical jobs that are available, that Fairfax County Public School System has available for our loved ones that are type of janitorial or standing or reaching high shelves, or this was something that was totally impossible for Yasmin. She also didn't show great interest for any of those tasks, but she showed interest in administrative types of tasks. But what happened was that about 5 years ago, and this is what sets her story very much apart from other. As we said before, all of our children are unique, but Yasmin started to show her paintings, and fast forward, she has been discovered as an extremely talented abstract painter, winning national awards and exhibiting in galleries in New York and here. So of course, despite her talent, at this point, this is not something that she could make money. I mean, her waiver is not at risk because she's not making enough money to put that in question, because there is a tremendous amount of expenses in travel, in representation, painting and the like, art supplies and the like. But more important than that, what that did for us and for her was that it gave her something that she does with passion, something that absorbs her. And many years ago, somebody told me nobody's gonna make money in the arts, and I thought, nobody's gonna make money as a greeter in a supermarket either. So that was not the purpose. And the purpose, I think that many of our parents, we need to understand that, yeah, we may want a small income, but what we want is not to have our children in the sofa. As my friend Donna Goldmanson from Spark says, you know, our children graduate to the sofa. And so we have the good fortune, not only that she's extremely talented, but that, and you can see her in TV, she's had 2 interviews, Fairfax County has a program on her on YouTube. But what is very, very important is that she has tremendous energy. She gets up at 6:30 and she occupies herself, not only painting, but for example, she's deaf. And when she was very, very little, she went to Mantua and she had basic sign language. But now she teaches herself sign language and she has worked tremendously on that. So along the way, we have had tremendous help. I think that Anna Southworth is on the line. Yeah, I see her name. She has been incredible support, as have been all the people in McLean High School and Davis Center. Now, the issues that are left for us are the issues of housing and transportation, as were mentioned before. I cannot imagine myself having Yasmin living in a group house. She has significant medical issues that require some special attention, and we are thinking of going the route of family. And in transportation, we have been fortunate that the waivers that she has always had allow us to have a assistant that would drive her. The volunteer opportunities have been many. She has volunteered in political campaigns, but also when she was in Davis Center, they brought her to the McLean Bible Church, and there she was working in a combination of graphic design and administration in the publishing, in the printing shop. And when she finished Davis Center, we had the good fortune of having the person in charge of the printing group to allow us to bring her sometimes when the students from Davis Center are not there to share in the workload. And I'm told that she's a terrific worker. She pays lots of attention to the detail, and she's incredibly charming, if I may say so. A difficult journey, yes, but the people who accompanied us were so terrific that, and I'm talking about the staff and families, and that made it all so much the better.
And Sylvia, I'm going to stop you there. Thank you so much for sharing and for your wonderful words of wisdom. We'll be back to you shortly. I'm going to ask if Helen Mayberry is available. Helen?
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Helen. Yes, thank you.
Hi, I'm with my daughter, Irene. I'll just speak a little bit and then I'll turn it over to Irene. My husband and I are the parents of 2 daughters. We have a younger daughter who is in general education in Fairfax County, and then our oldest, Irene, is born with Down syndrome. Irene's education was 20 years in Fairfax County Public Schools, ever since preschool. She graduated from West Springfield High School and moved on to the Pulley Career Center. Overall, our experiences with all of our teachers, therapists, and transition specialists has been a very positive experience. We're very proud of everything that Irene has accomplished. And we attribute her success directly to the army of professionals who stand behind her every single day. After she graduated from high school 4 years ago, Irene was fortunate enough to be accepted into the Pulley program, where she remained for 4 years with experiences provided in a variety of job settings. She worked at a local hotel, she worked at PetSmart, she worked at a Fairfax County government office. She also worked for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society as part of her internships. While she was at Pooley, Irene set a goal for herself to work in her 4th year at the airport, National Airport, and she met that goal with the help of her teachers and the transition specialists. And she was able to be at the airport for, I think, 2 or 3 months before we moved into pandemic mode, and that experience unfortunately had to end prematurely. But the time that she was there was very successful for Irene. As we prepared to exit Pooley, we worked very closely with Mr. Szymanski and the Community Services Board to explore options. We looked at vendor-related supported services, and we also looked at the George Mason Life program. Irene ended up making a choice to go into the Mason Life program. It is a completely different experience, at least for both of us, for all 3 of us, I think, as parents. It's a much different experience than being in a supported public school environment. The interactions are fully with the student, and the parent has a very backseat role, which is different, but Irene is thriving in this environment, and we're very proud of her. So with that, I'll turn it over to Irene and let her introduce herself.
Hi everybody, my name is Irene Mary. I'm sorry. Hi guys, how you guys? My name is Irene Mayberry. I'm sorry guys. My name is Irene Mayberry. I'm 22 years old. I'm a freshman. I'm a freshman, a student freshman at George Mason University. I am enrolled in Mason Life program. My dream job, working with different kinds of animals in the outside world. I am taking different kinds of experiential classes. Those classes was lab for fundamentals of communication and conversation, math and baking, housing, making your impact, self-regulation, technology, human sexuality. I'm also taking social media, and I also am taking employment skills and writing journals and letters and support for making your impact, and yeah. And my favorite subject is employment skills, because so I can get a job after I graduate from George Mason.
So as Irene mentioned, she's living at home with us. The Mason Life program offers both an on-campus living experience and a commuter experience. So we opted to go with the commuter experience. She gets back and forth to school using Metro Access. I heard a couple people before us talk about public transportation. Right now, that is one of our biggest obstacles. Metro Access works beautifully for Irene and has been a very reliable service for the last 7 months or so. So I anticipate continuing with that, but we wish that we could teach her how to use more public transportation, like using a bus back and forth. We live 4 miles from the campus, but unfortunately the bus routes don't take her on a circuitous route, so it's an hour-and-a-half one-way trip from our home to George Mason to go 4 miles. So that's a little bit of a sticking point, but we're very proud of her, and she's doing a great job. We're happy to answer any questions as we move on with this session. Thank you.
Helen and Irene, thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll have lots of questions coming your way shortly. Our final parent is Juliana Volata and her son Michael. Are you with us this evening?
Yes, we are. Say hi, Michael. Hello. Thank you so much having us this evening. I'm sorry I ran a little late. And so I'm going to try to make this as, in order, like from where we started, and I'm going to make it very brief. Michael graduated from Pulley in 2020, and we applied for his waiver in 2013. He still is waiting for a waiver slot. We've been told that he's not, high risk. So they keep pushing us, like to the end of the line. I mean, at least that's how I see it. He was a former student at West Springfield High School. I did everything that was on the list, everything they put in my face, everything I did, or I tried to do. I applied for Metro Access, he got approved. I applied for SSI, he got approved. I did the guardianship, he got approved. I also had to do a will. I found that out after I was granted guardianship. So the day of the court hearing is when I found out that I needed to have a will. So everything they pushed in front of my face, I did. One thing that I still have to master is the S&T or an ABLE account, which has been sitting on the back burner forever. And every year I said I'm going to do it, and every year I push it to next year. So that's something I need to do. So that might be a goal for me. When he was at Pulley, he did the courtyard out, which he did very well. He got A's and everything. He was straight across the board, it was A's. When he got to the culinary skills, he wasn't so good. He started slow. The grades wasn't looking pretty, but by the end of the year, he was, getting in the A and B range. So he did really well. It's not his strong suit though. And in his final year at Pulley, he was doing office skills. Did pretty well. He was pretty good in that. But he was much better at doing hotel skills because that is what he was learning when he was at West Springfield High School. I'm not going to say all the jobs he did at West Springfield High School, but I will say that in his last year at West Springfield High School, he was doing, he was working at a church, and I believe he was also working at Kilroy's at the time. And so he did really well there. Michael graduated in his junior year while he was at Springfield. So he went in as a junior but came out as a senior. So he was ecstatic that he was graduating. And he was ready to move on. When we were at Pulley, we chose our top 3 vendors in 2019. I like to do things ahead of time. I'm a staff assistant. That's what I do for a living. I'm very organized, and I like to do things ahead of time. I don't like waiting at the last minute. We did everything in 2019. I thought, we were going to be okay, And then early COVID happened, and none of the vendors would open for business. I kept in touch with his caseworker, who now we have a different caseworker called the transition caseworker. Throughout 2020, I was very email. I believe in having a paper trail and everything. Email is my strong suit, and so I would always check back throughout the whole pandemic. Check back and see how Michael was looking. And in September, August, Michael had some options. One of them was to try again with the caseworker and see if he has a slot. To go to a vendor that handles trades, multiple trades. One of them was MBLE, and the other one was Service Source in Alexandria. Service Source was my top vendor. So when I reached out to her in August of 2020, she told me that the vendors were getting ready to reopen in September, but only to current clients, not taking new clients. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do now? So when Pulley was over, Michael was just sleeping in late, waking up late, eating all the time. I mean, he was just, he was your typical young adult. Like, he didn't want to do anything. And when I noticed that my son was losing his hair, then that's when I became very concerned, because he was like 21 and already losing his hair. So, fortunately, was going to summer camp during the summer, but it wasn't through the county. It was, privately paid summer camp with the Martial Arts Academy where he goes to. He's been going to this Martial Arts Academy since he was in West Springfield, and he's now a yellow belt, and he was so happy, with just going back to summer camp, doing something normal. Now they didn't get to go to all the places where they go in the past, movie theater, pools, water parks, because of the pandemic. So instead of doing what they usually do, they've been going to the park, like different types of parks, every single day. And Michael was content just, going to the park every day. As long as he was out of the house, he was happy. His hair was starting to grow back, which made me very happy. And then the owner of the academy was like, what's Michael's goal for the next school year? And I told him, I said, well, he's got nothing lined up. And he said, if you want, you can bring Michael here and he can attend virtual camp. He can be a role model for the kids that do have to go to school, for the kids that do have to get credit. And he said that he would also make sure that Michael did some work around the academy, because that was my main concern, that I did not want him to lose his job skills. Everything that he has learned, I did not want that to go to waste, because it worked so hard, to get my son to where he is. And I did not want all the hard work, the sweat, the tears, the frustration, all to go away. And so I am paying out of pocket for this virtual camp. It is not cheap. It is very, very expensive. They have my credit card, and it hurts really bad. But he's happy. I had this talk with my son. I asked him, I said, Michael, I said, what do you want to do? I mean, you got nowhere to go. There is no vendor that's open right now to take you in. Do you want to go to K2? That's the Martial Arts Academy. I asked him, do you want to go to K2 full time? And he said, yes. And I said, you do realize you'll be going 5 days a week. And the part of the deal is that you're going to help them out with cleaning around the academy, that you're not just going to be sitting around listening to music, watching YouTube, that you're also going to be showing a good role model, showing good example to the kids, because these are middle schoolers and elementary, and some of them are special needs. I want to say that my son was the very first special needs client that the owner of the academy has ever had. Ever since then, he has opened doors. He opened his door to my friend whose daughter has got brain injury, and I think he took 2 more in. So I am proud to say that my son was the very first client of his that has special needs, and he was 17 at the time. I was going through a custody battle with his dad. So 2015 and 2016 was really tough for me. But I'm happy to report that I became his legal, his full, what was it now? Full custody? Sole custody? Whatever. I was his full custody parent, and I became his full guardianship parent. So everything worked in my favor, but it was not cheap. Everything was crazy expensive. That's probably why I never got to the S&T or the, ABLE account. But
Juliana, we're going to stop. No, thank you. We're going to. No apologies necessary. We're going to stop you right there, and I'm sure we have lots of questions coming your way. I'm going to introduce Maggie Contreras, who is going to work with some of the questions that we have from our participants.
Thank you so much, Ms. Denisar, and thank you, panel members, for giving everyone an overview of some of your experiences. I know it's so helpful for families that are, just starting this process to hear about what you all have been through. So at this time, what we are going to do is we're going to take some questions from our audience. And what you can do, if you would like, you can use the raise your hand feature. There's a button in the middle of your screen. You can raise your hand and we can enable your mic and camera if you would like to ask your question verbally. Or if you are not comfortable doing that, if you prefer to use the chat, that is completely fine as well. And panel members, I know we have 5 of you, so if one member is answering the question and you want to jump in or add something, please feel free to jump in, or you can also just raise your hand. So let's see if are there any questions from the audience? Okay, Mary. So we are going to just enable your mic and camera. Okay, Mary, do you want to turn on your mic and camera? Go ahead and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, this is great. I am particularly interested in what the young adults do when they're not in school training. I mean, that was very interesting about the martial arts academy, but I guess Luke, who his mom gave a good description of his day, and maybe Libby and Irene and Yasmin also, what do they do when they're not involved in their vocation?
This is Sylvia. I can talk about Yasmin. Yasmin has a very, very intense agenda. She has physical therapy. She has speech therapy. She has yoga 3 times a week, speech therapy twice a week. She takes lots of classes online. She has a math tutor. She loves math, so she keeps on working on her math. And as I said, she also loves to listen to music. She likes country music, and she likes kind of Amazing Grace and kind of religious music. She teaches herself sign language. And she helps me with some chores around the house, the ones that don't imply dust and cleaning. So she's on the go from 6:30 till 9 p.m.
Thank you, Sylvia. Helen and Irene, did you want to jump in and add anything?
Yeah, I can answer what I just heard already. So I would say, me honestly, I do go to George Mason University for college. So I wake up at 5:50, almost 6, and after I wake up, I get myself ready and then get my butt fixed, and then I go outside at 7:45 or about 7:45. Before 7:51, my mental access kind of gets me, and so sometimes it's 7:51 or 8 o'clock, and I go to college after it takes me there, and it's just for free time.
What do you do in your free time?
For
fun.
Yeah, for my free time, I love listening to music for my free time, and I love paying attention to my grades, and I literally pay attention and stay focused in class. I always do. I always listen to follow directions and be flexible. So my college is actually, I think my mom says, a non-degree program that I'm starting to join.
Irene, also during the Mason Life program offers some social activities on the weekends. And the George Mason students, the George Mason Mason Life program is taught primarily by educator students in master's and doctoral programs. Overseen by their professors. These same students on the weekend volunteer their time for 2 or 3 hour intervals, and the students get together to go out to restaurants, watch movies together, play board games. There are a lot of virtual activities this past year. Irene's also a volunteer in our church, and she delivers newsletters in the neighborhood on a once or twice a month. So keeps pretty busy, I think.
Great, thank you. Beth, did you want to go ahead and add something?
Well, this is John. I was raising Beth's hand for her.
Sure, sorry about that, John.
No, that's fine. No, that's not a problem. We're fortunate, except for now, because she was kind of furloughed because of COVID. But essentially, we've been fortunate that Elizabeth has had pretty close to a full-time job for several years now. So the answer to this question is, outside of this, in addition, of course, to Special Olympics activities, is the Fairfax County Self-Directed Services Program. I saw some chats on it, but we've been participating in that for a couple of years. And the nice thing about that is we've been fortunate to have some family friends who are actually, school teachers who like the extra activity. And so basically, through SDS, she gets to, go out with friends and go do social things like visit museums. Now, again, this is pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID, but the self-directed services program essentially pays for being able to have help with LIB to go out into the community and do things with peers, exactly. So please put that on your list if you're not familiar with it, to check into it.
Thank you so much for your responses and for bringing that up about self-directed services. I know it's really good for families to be aware of. I am looking in the chat and I see it says, for Lena, can you discuss the independent living and the personal trainer? Do you have that information? Do you have an email?
Sure. Let me talk about the independent living quickly, because it's something that if you all are interested in ever having your kid live either in an independent living situation, you're going to want to just quickly hear about this. So with the DD waiver, as I told you, Luke didn't have the waiver that gets him access to the group home, but his waiver got him access to an independent living apartment. That apartment is subsidized. It's subsidized through the SRAP, which is the State Rental Assistance Program. And so the SRAP is run by Fairfax County Housing Authority. And so it's through the SRAP that most of his rent is paid for. I'd say 3/4 of it. And then he pays 1/3 of it with his Social Security. So the SRAP is an important program for folks to realize is out there. And then, so we went, Luke does a bunch of fitness classes. We're like a really athletic kind of family. So we took him to Providence Rec Center. We got him assessed by the woman who runs the gym, and she hooked us up with a trainer that would be a good match for him. So once or twice a week, he has just a personal fitness trainer at Providence. I mean, they're doing it outside right now, and it's going great, and he loves it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Lena. That's all really valuable information. I'm seeing another question here. I was wondering if anyone has seen or experienced day support programs for those adults with more severe disabilities who need aids with them for medical or daily living skills. Would any of our panel members be able to speak to day support programs? Okay. Well, I would recommend, Michelle, if you, depending on the age of your child, if your child is not in high school yet, once they are in high school, I would recommend connecting with your ETR, because they can certainly provide you with some further information on day support programs and how someone gets connected with them and touring them in the future if that's something that you're interested in. I see a question here that's for Beth. Beth, how did you get connected with the internship?
I think we just kind of tried to type that out in the chat as
Oh,
well.
okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
But it just was through a different program when we were out of state, and that's kind of how that Project Search, which is a nationwide program, but it allowed the students to go out and intern in various job sites.
In this case, she interned at a hospital.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So I can throw this question out there for any of our members to please answer. What advice or what free advice would you give a parent who is kind of just starting out with the transition planning process?
Yeah, this is Lena. So I think the biggest shock to us really was understanding that once the Davis Center ended, that we really needed to get a understanding of what kind of programs were out there. And so we actually spent a lot of time going to visit each of these programs. And it really made us realize, like for our son Luke, that, you know, he didn't need an all day, like a group setting program, that he probably could do a job for a certain amount of time, not full time in any sense, but it's really like get a good sense of what the programs are. Go visit them. I must have done 15 visits of different programs that are offered, and just understanding what the programs do, where they are, how they're located, how they take their clients around. It's an eye opener that is an important part of planning your next steps.
Thank you.
Also, I would say, if you don't think your kid can ever live alone, I never thought Luke would be able to live on his own. And though he's got tons of support in and out of his apartment with his waiver, like we just never thought he would be able to live alone. And now he honestly never wants to come sleep at our house.
It's a very good point. Thank you so much. Other questions from the audience? I see a question here that says, what are the differences between the Pulley Center program and the high school STEP program? Would any of our moderators care to answer that question? Yes, Michael, go ahead, please.
Yeah, this was Michael Szymanski, the ETR at Pulley Career Center. So the easiest way, I guess, to explain it is Pulley, we have a little bit more of a small group instruction at our sites, where STEP is a little bit more independent. Try to break it down as easiest as I can. So STEP program is a little bit more for our students that are a little bit more independent, that will head out to the sites. Both programs, before COVID, the students were working like 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at the sites for about 4 hours each day. But again, Pulley Center students were mostly with, a teacher and PHTA at the site with a group of like 5 students, and STEP would be more independent with check-in from staff.
Thank you, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question here that we can pose for our panel members. How early do you recommend starting the process for transition to adulthood?
This is Helen Mayberry. I think I don't know that I ever got an answer to that. I think I think the best advice I got in from a parent when I joined one of the sessions that they had at Lake Braddock, where all of the community supports were available for families to visit there and gather information. One parent, when Irene was in ninth grade, advised, "Don't worry. When you get closer to graduating from high school, the transition specialist will take you through each step of the way." I'm a bit of a planner, and that didn't settle me down a whole lot, but I did learn to take that advice and slow down and help Irene enjoy the school experience. And it turned out that the parents' advice was correct. When Irene was a senior in high school, the planning for her next stop kicked into high gear. The Fairfax County Public School staff guided us every step of the way. Once Irene arrived at the Pulley Center, the staff there continued to guide every step of the way, setting and it didn't change much from our primary education experience. Goals were set and were evaluated regularly, so we always had a good idea of what Irene was doing and how she was progressing. And the job experiences, each job experience was based on whatever success that she achieved at the prior job site. So she was able to build on her skills. And I think, and then again, similar to senior year in high school, when she reached her fourth year at Pulley, and even at the end of the third year, planning for transition into the community kicked into high gear, with opportunities to meet vendors, vendor supported services in the community, and learn more about the what's available out there in the community. I honestly, you might even be able to tell by the way I'm talking now, I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot from listening to the other parents on the panel now, but it's a constant learning experience. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you, Helen. It does. I think we maybe have time for one more question, and I saw a question in here about Wilson Workforce Rehab Center. Lena, would you be willing to share your experience with WWRC?
Sure, yeah. So Luke got into a program there for, it was a 1-month program. And basically the way I viewed the program was, it was kind of, we liked it for the fact that he got to sort of live independently, and they did all sorts of testing on him about what areas he would be good in terms of like a job area. But after the month he left, what I really kind of thought was that I don't need necessarily to send him away to a program like that. Like the goal is to really integrate them into jobs in your communities, rather than to get them kind of living for 6 months or a month on a campus where there's like jobs set up. So for me, I after the month program, Luke wasn't interested in going back, but he was interested in continuing to have job experiences, but just within our community.
Thank you so much. Panel members, I just want to thank you again for sharing your experiences and your wisdom and your knowledge of this process with some of our younger audience members tonight. I am going to turn it back over to Mr. Castellano at this time. Thank you again.
Okay. Okay, can everyone hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. I apologize. We have had a lot of behind the scenes tech issues tonight, and I'm amazing we were able to pull this off. So I want to first thank Ms. Contreras, Ms. Denisar, our parent and student panel. You shared personal information, personal experiences. It was just really insightful and wonderful to hear. And I mentioned this last night, but we're very fortunate to have, we are very fortunate to have so many amazing presenters, but the parent panels, they just continue to be my favorite for every reason that you heard tonight. Just another friendly reminder, please click on the link in the chat. It will take you to a short form that allows us to collect feedback on this session. We ask you please complete the survey, as we want to hear from you to make our events better every year. And I can't believe this concludes Super Transition Week. We hope that everybody benefited from the expertise our presenters shared, and we hope that our audience members feel more confident and have more resources while planning for the futures of their children and their students. Just as a reminder, webinar recordings and evaluations from the Parent Resource Center will be emailed to you tomorrow. And finally, I'd like to say a special thank you to our coordinator, Janelle Ellis, for her support and leadership, as well as everyone who served on the committee and made this event a success. This live virtual event that's spanned 4 nights is very different from the way we've done it in the past, but we're able to take a victory lap tonight because of the committee's hard work and their commitment to students and families. So for everyone you heard from and everyone working behind the scenes, I will always be indebted to you. Good night to everyone, and please stay safe.